Hi, my name is Larry Benjamin. I'm the re-recording mixer that handles dialogue and music for the Emmy-nominated PLUR1BUS.
My name is Tim Hoogenakker. I'm the re-recording mixer on pluribus. We've been nominated for the hour-long program for the Emmys for 2026.
I'm Dave Porter. I'm a composer and music producer, and I'm fortunate enough to be nominated for 3 Emmys for my work on pluribus, for the overall score, the main title sequence, and working as part of our sound mix team.
PLUR1BUS is an interesting show because we start the show in the real world that we're in, and so the real world has a lot of sound to it. We're in a bar, we're in a lab, we're in an airport, in normal environments. So we tend to make it sound kind of as you would hear it, but even a little bit more hyper-realistic. So the sound is very full, very, immersed with sound, with fullness and fidelity. As the show goes on, we realize that the others don't need to communicate verbally. They have this hive mind. So how do you sell that with sound? So there's a lot of emptiness. So we sell a lot of space between the notes, if you will, sonically.
With having that much space without wallas and group, we would also have to have, it would give me a little bit more room to maybe bloom some of the Foley and maybe some of the backgrounds and some of the ambiences around, and just fill some of the things in the background, such as even like dogs barking in the background, things that you might miss when you have voices going, but when they're not there, it's a little more sparse. You have that playground to fit more things, even subtly.
One of the things we talked about so much was the sound of the show as a whole. So there's this incredible opportunity, but also a really tricky balance of trying to build that world sonically. And we did that through incredible sound design, and we also did that with music. And there's moments where music has an opportunity to be more to the fore on this show because there's less dialogue, there's less other sounds to compete against, which of course is a joy as a composer. But there's also so many moments where we have to be really careful to honor the loneliness, the sparseness, and really allow that quiet, insular world that we've created to sink in for our audience.
One of the biggest challenges was the dynamics in the mix that we wanted to achieve. This is the first time that I've encountered such a contrast in the quiet and the intentional noise, if you will. And that's what we would use often, is a contrast. But again, it has to all be subtle little details, right? We want to use Foley a lot because that's an element that can sell sound just in the details, cracking open of a book, or footsteps on different surfaces. When Carol discovers that the others are freezing, their fallen others, if you will, that have passed on, that's a very reverberant space, and we want to make that very haunting and very large. We don't really see how large it is, but we know it is. So sonically, I try to lean into those moments and show a size and scope of a place using elements such as reverb and delays and whatnot. But it was an interesting challenge because, it's a lot of contrast that we have to sell, as well as subtle little details that we want to have cut through.
Chocolate, strawberry, so on. But the thing is, it's not milk in any of them. It is this one strange.
So we don't have a lot of source music in the show, but here's an opportunity to show off. Carol is hitting golf balls at a glass building and blasting music from this CD player, old school. And let me play it for you, the scene as it is, and then I can break it down in terms of me futzing and treating each angle. Vince likes to sell perspective, not so much so that it's distracting, but enough so that we can feel and hear the different perspectives. So here's that. So it's fun, basically using a combination of a convolution reverb and an algorithmic reverb, going to slightly different places in terms of the panning. So I'm panning the direct signal itself, moving that and kind of pointing that to where we are, in the screen geography. And then doing the same thing with the returns. The returns for the reverb tend to be a little bit more immersive. And we start off actually with very little verb and kind of wind into the verb. We kind of wanted to do a little bit of scorce, if you will, and it starts off as kind of just needle drop music and then it kind of folds into where it is. But you can see on the return, I have that kind of not fully immersed because we don't want it to be distracting. We want it to be somewhat realistic. But that's at least the reverb treatment. And then for each track itself, you know, for instance, here I have this kind of going mostly front heavy. And you can see I have a high pass, low pass filter creating the futz, and I'm opening up the filter as obviously it goes through the window and reveals the outside world.
My process for film and TV is that I'll take the scene that I'm working on, put it in a loop on the video, and then my studio is geared up so that everything in the room is on at any time and I can hear everything. And I'll just move around the room from instrument to instrument, experimenting, improvising, until I find that one little nugget of something, everything always being recorded, so that I can go back and find that little gem that becomes the genesis of a cue. One of the trickiest parts about composing the score for Pluribus was the use of the small-scale choir that I've used extensively in Pluribus. And while it's easier these days to mock up orchestral music, it's particularly difficult to mock up experimental vocal sounds. So using Pro Tools and lots of different sample libraries and a lot of different editing techniques was the only way that I could get in there and try to build some template for these vocal things that ultimately were built in the room with the choir. Here's an early look at a cue from the pilot episode of Pluribus. This starts with the very unsexy title of 1M18A, but ultimately would become We Just Want to Help, Carol. These early versions of the session are all just me trying to create a demo version that I'm going to later show to our producers and directors. But as you move down, you'll see copies of a rough mix, followed by lots of versions of MIDI tracks and also just samples that I've thrown in or samples of things, recordings I've made in my own studio. So this is a very intense moment in the pilot, immediately following the realization that Carol's wife, Helen, has passed away, and realizing that the others are all coming to life. So as she looks up here, you'll see that she notices what's happening, followed by a big hit here on the reveal of all the others coming to life inside the hospital, which in this case was, I think, a big patch, brass patch on memory moog, mixed, of course, with some real brass later. As we move into this moment where Carol tries to get the attention of this ER doctor, and they all turn and we realize that they're all, again, moving together. This is where I start to bring in the voices. Starting here, obviously, is where this becomes more of an action cue, as Carol wants to get herself and Helen's body out of there as fast as she can. And then this sequence here is a really impressive one-shot take where we're building the freneticism of the moment, obviously the terror of what she's feeling and what she's learning, and we as an audience are learning through her rear window of what the others are up to and trying to make sense of it all. And this builds from here, of course, up into her finally escaping back to her cul-de-sac in Albuquerque with realization of everything that's happening, including Albuquerque burning behind her in the distance. And here's where the tempo slows as she realizes she's now home, but alone, and Helen is gone. With a final little cello motif for Helen.
The response from the world in general of this show and how it sounds has been overwhelming, because when we're mixing it, we're in our own bubble. We're inside of our own heads, and we're mixing, so we're tied in very fine-tuned into everything, so that when we can hear later on how much people appreciated it, it also allows us to step back and look at it a little bit from afar and go, oh, that did work. Wow, that worked out great. So it really helped, you know, to make us feel like we did something really special here. I would say the first 5-6 minutes of episode 2 is probably the most that I'm proud of that show. It is entirely, first off, it's entirely sound effects. It's basically her getting into the airplane, her going through her journey to get into the airplane, taking off on the airplane. So it's all the, you know, the Foley and everything else is tied in with that. It was just very immersive, in Dolby Atmos especially. So very proud of that scene. Beginning of episode 2, this is our introduction of Zosha. One of the things that Vince was very careful about was he's an aircraft guy. So he knows all the different sounds that these aircraft will make. He'll know the solenoids, the startup procedures, and the timing of the startup procedures as well, as all these engines fire up. And also you'll notice in the panning that even goes across, so we're doing specific engines across each wing as we're going over. And we'll play up till about right when the plane starts taking off. So here this comes. In this section, if I show you some of the elements that are going on, you can hear some of the the engine motors taking off. And so for example, here's some of the instrumentation turning on. You hear some of the engine here. And you see it has that rattle off to the right there. It's like a very specific rattle. It's actually a very old airplane. It doesn't look like it, but it's a very old plane. And Vince knew exactly what this thing's gonna sound like at that point. So here's this. So, and then of course other elements is here during this moment as well. So we have these engines. Kind of hear the engines outside the plane here. Well as here we have just kind of overall ambience in the engines here. And then we get the liftoff. Now in Atmos, this climbs over your head, goes directly over, and it lands directly or continues behind us through the main title sequence. So here it comes with this. What I love about this process and being a re-recording mixer is that this is the portion of the project where at the very end, all the elements have been put together. People spend weeks and months editing all the dialogue and editing all the music and scoring the music and doing all the sound effects design and the Foley walking. And we get to put it all together and we get to balance it with the showrunner and the filmmakers. And we get to put it all together, layer or unlayer even, take things away, add things in, and it's totally creative. That's what's very fulfilling for me. The day goes by super fast.
I enjoy pre-dubbing a lot. I like the art of taking all these different tracks and then kind of shaping them and making them sound like a polished soundtrack. That's the fun part of the technical part of it. I really enjoy using soft skills and interpreting what the client's saying in non-audio terms. Can you make it a little more blue? Make it more boomy, make it less boomy. Can we make it louder without raising the volume? Interpreting. I love the client interaction. That's very gratifying. And because this is such a group effort, that experience is intensified even more because it's everybody's input and opinions.
For me, the composing and mixing music for TV, creating music for TV, it's all about showing something new and fresh and exciting to someone who's worked so hard to make a powerful story come true, and have this music come in usually towards the end of the process, right? And just elevate things to a place, hopefully, where that writer, that producer, that director couldn't have even imagined it being.